Welcome back. You're watching World News, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Gdańsk is hosting the second day of the European Commission summit as Poland took over the presidency of the Council of the EU in January of 2025. Yesterday, officials attended a ceremonial dinner, and today they are holding discussions on the future of the European community.
Among the scheduled meetings is a talk between Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Today's talks will be focused on security of the European Union and Poland's priorities for its term in the presidency. Ministers and the College of Commissioners will also meet to discuss security, international relations, competitive economy, democracy and the rule of law.
The new U.S. ambassador to Poland is likely to focus on promoting American interests and conservative pro-Israeli agendas instead of building diplomatic bridges between Washington and Warsaw, according to TVP World's guest, Professor Tomasz Pudowski.
They agree on how to perform in this office, in other words, how to promote American interests. So this was not maybe a typical ambassadorial post. He did not mention Poland. He did not make any references trying to build bridges, which is what ambassadors usually do. What he said was basically playing into Donald Trump campaign agenda, America first. He's going to promote American interests, and judging from what he has done so far in his life, a conservative agenda, a Zionist agenda, a strong support for Israel, a strong support for American business and conservative values. Tom Rose is a respected entrepreneur, journalist. He's close to Trump. He was close to the first Trump administration because he was advisor to Vice President Pence. I guess the two men know each other. Judging from how he presented himself, how both Donald Trump and the new ambassador, he still has to go through Congress to be sworn in. But we can safely assume, I think, that he will become ambassador, 95% probably.
As mentioned before, Donald Trump has nominated political commentator and entrepreneur Thomas Rose as the next U.S. ambassador to Poland. The news was announced by the American president via his social media platform, Truth Social. Thomas Rose is no stranger to Europe and Poland in particular. Back in December of 2024, he met with Polish President Andrzej Duda, who he called America's greatest friend in the European Union.
I'm pleased to announce that Thomas Rose will serve as the next United States ambassador to Poland. Thomas is a highly respected businessman and commentator who had a successful radio show on Sirius XM for almost a decade and served as the publisher and CEO of the Jerusalem Post. He will make sure our interests are represented in Poland and always put America first. Congratulations, Thomas. I'm deeply honoured and profoundly humbled to be asked by our history-making President of the United States to serve as ambassador to Poland. If confirmed, I will spend each and every day doing my very best to promote, defend and advance the interests of the United States of America and our fabulous President, Donald Trump.
Before his nomination to the post of U.S. ambassador to Poland, Thomas Rose was a guest in the TVP World studio. Speaking about the future of EU-U.S. relations under the Trump administration, Rose said that Poland ought to be thrilled about the new U.S. president. Moreover, according to Rose, the Polish-American alliance could stand as a prime example of what transatlantic cooperation should look like.
There are many countries in Europe that should worry. There's one country in Europe that should be thrilled. And that country is Poland. I think in the second Trump administration, much of the diplomatic focus in Europe is going to be directed towards dramatically reducing the immense security burden that the alliance now puts on the United States, because too many European countries impose upon the U.S. this security burden by failing to meet their own defense commitments. And that's why I think it'll be essential that the United States is going to strengthen its relationship with the one continent that does more than any other to meet its security obligations, and then more so, and that's Poland. So I think the U.S.-Polish relationship is going to be emphasized more than ever before as the model that America expects from all of its allies and partners in continental Europe.
The International Criminal Court has condemned Donald Trump's decision to sanction prosecutors investigating citizens of the U.S. and its allies. In a written statement, the court expressed its support for the prosecutors who, according to the ICC, work on providing justice and hope to millions of innocent victims.
The ICC condemns the issuance by the US of an executive order seeking to impose sanctions on its officials and harm its independent and impartial judicial work. The court stands firmly by its personnel and pledges to continue providing justice and hope to millions of innocent victims of atrocities across the world in all situations before it. We call on our 125 states, parties, civil society and all nations of the world to stand united for justice and fundamental human rights.
Leading figures from European far-right parties gathered in Madrid for a summit organized by the Vox Party of Spain. Among the officials in the Spanish capital will be Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and French far-right leader Marine Le Pen. The key point of the summit will be a discussion on Trump's recent comments about taking over the Gaza Strip.
The meeting takes place as Vox, the third largest force in the Spanish parliament, continues to do well in the polls. While not on the official agenda, the Gaza issue is likely to be on the table. Israel suggested on Thursday that the last 3 countries to recognize Palestine should take in people who want to leave the Gaza Strip voluntarily. The proposal was flatly rejected by the Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Álvarez, who considered it an interference in national politics.
The European Union agreed with Czech officials on restricting freedom of movement for Russian diplomats. Poland has already introduced similar measures, banning Russian staff from leaving their assigned country.
There are around 2,000 Russian diplomats in the European Union, 20% of whom are intelligence agents, according to Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski. This means that some 400 Russian agents can travel throughout the EU freely and aid in planning hybrid attacks on member states. While the Czech initiative is not yet on the official sanctions list, Polish officials said they will push for the idea to be added to the listing. At the same time, Radosław Sikorski said the measure does not require a unanimous vote in the EU, as such restrictions are the responsibility of each individual member state.
The General Staff of Ukraine said that since the Ukrainian army entered Russia's Kursk region, the Russian army has lost some 40,000 troops, including at least 16,000 dead soldiers. Officials in Kyiv also noted it is the first time in 11 years of conflict that military operations were conducted on Russian soil.
As stated by Ukrainian authorities, the goal of the Kursk offensive was preventing Russian attacks in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions of Ukraine. The operation, according to officials in Kyiv, met the expectations of Ukraine's leadership. According to high-ranking members of the Ukrainian armed forces, it pressured Moscow to move soldiers and supplies to the region, alleviating pressure from other front lines. Additionally, due to the success of the Ukrainian military, Russia was forced to seek support from North Korea. Overall, North Korean losses have amounted to 4,000 soldiers. Out of the 3 brigades which arrived in Russia from Pyongyang, 1 has been destroyed, while the other 2 lost combat readiness and were removed from the front line.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said in a televised interview that if given the opportunity, Vladimir Putin will once again attack Ukraine. According to Zelensky, a frozen conflict in Ukraine will lead to more Russian troops on Ukrainian soil. Zelensky added that Trump must not only finish the war, but also make sure that Putin has no chance to strike again.
A frozen conflict will lead to Putin coming back again with his aggression. Who will then be receiving prizes? Who will then make history as a winner? No one. And that will be a loss to absolutely everyone. And it's very important for us, as well as for Trump. He needs to not just finish the war, he needs to make sure that Putin has no chance of coming back with a war against us. I believe this is the most important part, and everyone must admit that. Then it will be a victory.
Speaking with CNN, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov announced that Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump are yet to discuss a possible meeting. According to Peskov, there has not been an initial contact between the two leaders about whether such a meeting was needed or where and how it might take place. Earlier on Thursday, however, Leonid Slutsky, a deputy of the Russian State Duma, said that a meeting between the two leaders could take place in February or March and that preparations for a U.S.-Russian summit are at advanced stage.
23 people.
China is trying to become less vulnerable to U.S. sanctions through collaboration with other actors such as Russia and Iran. According to our guest, Professor Evan Ellis from the U.S. Army War College, China and the West are tightly intertwined, and a regional conflict would not impact just local economies. Ellis went to say that due to the recent crises in China, the country's authorities recognize the need to disconnect itself from the Western financial systems.
Over recent years, especially the past decade, as U.S.-China hostilities increase, China has been slowly but very deliberately de-risking and de-leveraging. As a matter of fact, China in 2014 held about $1.2 trillion worth of U.S. treasuries. That number is now down under $800 billion. And so it's little by little trying to move away from that, just as the U.S. is trying to move away from dependence on Chinese technologies in its supply chains. In addition to that, you see China trying to escape vulnerability to U.S. sanctions by alternative mechanisms, trying to internationalize the renminbi or the yuan, collaborating with, again, actors such as Russia, Iran, and others, and indeed moving towards digital currencies that, again, facilitate different options for itself. Having said that, it is still important to recognize that the economic interdependence is substantial, and thus if you had any type of conflict in the Indo-Pacific, such as what could start over Taiwan or other economic shock in general, that given China's enormous debt overhang, as we've seen with the crisis of its real estate sector in recent years, China recognizes that bad things that could happen in the financial system in the West would spill over to it, and things that could happen in the Indo-Pacific could very much also affect Western states.
And so this marks the end of our broadcast, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World. We're back in just a moment with more news and features.